So let's take a look at the best Warhammer 40k tournament lists, with a quick check-in as to what's doing well after 40k's last balance update. Hello and welcome back to Auspex Tactics, where today we're talking army lists, and in this video I thought we'd take a look at a whole selection of army lists for factions doing well since the points update for the game. At time of recording, there was a big points update to Warhammer 40k around about 10 days ago or so now. This weekend is the first one where tournaments around the world are more generally using the new points, mostly compared with the old. Plus we've got the official points for the Orks and Custodies Codex going live as well. So this will be the first outing for them. Unfortunately, Tau is still waiting on their Codex points. I'd guess they'll drop sometime during this week, so they're currently still playing Index rules right now. I thought it could just be fun to take a look at what's being played by the best players in the game and getting some tournament success, so lists that are placing very high at big tournaments or outright winning smaller ones. I think it can just be interesting to see how people's lists have been updated since the previous. We have had a whole load of points buffs and nerfs. I think it's always quite fun to see new units coming to the fore again after they've been bad for a while and then getting points cuts. Broadly speaking, it initially really doesn't look like game balance in 40k is too bad, certainly not seeing one faction just run rampant over the tournament standings. I feel like initial impressions about the points updates seem to be kind of correct so far. There's definitely a small selection of armies doing really quite well in attendance and event wins, and some maybe slightly conspicuously absent, but in all honesty I really think it's far too early to be talking about tournament win rates or anything like that with just 1 week of data. A lot of it's just going to be random chance. Will be fun to follow that up later though. For this one though, I thought it could be interesting to take a look at a selection of lists, 9 different factions in the game and one example of what one good player has managed to do well with them, particularly paying attention to any units that seem to be more increased in prevalence since the points changes. Jumping straight in, I was certainly keen to see how the Orks were getting on. Perhaps as expected, it looks like the Bully Boys that have taken down the first grand tournament for the Greenskins. This list by Jeff Dew, going 6-0 at Loaded Dice May the 4th Open. A sort of small to medium grand tournament of 30 players. I think Bully Boys was the one that most people were expecting that Orks would do well with, particularly just a whole bunch of 30-point mega knobs getting mad defense from their Feel No Pain, and also mad damage and advance and charge from the War. This list uses 3 sets of them. 2 of them led by war bosses in mega armor, one with the big gob enhancement, one with teleporter so they could deep strike, being a pretty scary and enormous rapid ingress type threat. All the mega knobs are taking twin kill saws, so they're going to be threatening enough to take down the toughest stuff in the game with those strength 12 twin linked attacks, and the war boss can definitely help out with his huge chopper and making them hit more accurately as well. Then besides that, there's no less than 3 individual regular bosses, each with power claws, very fighty in the war, and getting 2 turns of it is massively intimidating. One of them's joining a unit of 5 knobs with power claws, one a unit of 10 knobs with power claws, and one a big unit of 20 boys alongside a pain boy as well. That's to be a unit with 2 turns worth of 5+ invulnerable saves and 5+ feel no pains, definitely going to take a serious amount of scraping to take them off objectives. The detachment's got some pretty nice stratagems as well, some good damage boost ones, and a sort of orky armor of contempt versus ranged attacks with the AP-1 debuff. That one's great for mega knobs who already have great durability. Otherwise, we've got objective support with 3 units of 10 Gretchen, always good for those stratagems and just being cheap units to do secondaries and things. 2 units of 5 Storm Boys, very fast moving secondary threats. Boss Snickrot as the Orky lone operative, who I'm really not too surprised to see here. Some people seem to be a bit uncertain as to whether he'd be used, but I did think he was very likely to see play. And between all that, that's really quite a lot of objective support, while all the bosses and the knobs get to killing the enemy in earnest. There's 4 trucks to transport them there. I guess that's 2 units of the 5 mega knobs, and the 5 and the 10 man knob squad, and the last mega knobs might rapid ingress. Overall looks pretty terrifying. If any of these units catch virtually anything that they can get their claws on, they're going to cause obscene damage. 2 turns of the war is really quite scary for them getting to grips with the foe as well. Next up, we've got a Chaos Space Marine army, this one by Innes Wilson, who used it to take first at Clan Wars Scottish Open, going 5-0 at a slightly bigger GT of 43 players. Again, really not too surprised to see Chaos Space Marines doing significantly better since they had all those points cuts. They are a faction that can just spit out some massive damage with the Marks of Chaos type combos. It looks like this list is going for the Abaddon plus Hellbrute combo, which means that you can be re-rolling all your hit rolls and have double Dark Pats going off on a 5+. Just an absolutely obscene combo of firepower boost there from the already efficient Chaos Predator Destructors and Vindicators. that already get a whole ton of hits due to the Mark of Nurgle giving them sustained hits on a 5+. I might guess that Abaddon might be running solo and just using the Mark of Nurgle to protect him as needed. I guess he could be running with one of the Legionary units perhaps, or he could just be hanging out with the tanks, handing out some obscene firepower and then being a countercharge threat later on. Otherwise there's 2 Rhinos, which I'd guess the Legionaries are broadly going to be jumping out of, 4 units of 5 Legionaries with 2 heavy melee weapons, 2 plasma pistols and chainswords. They'll get the Mark of Slanesh for loads of sustained hits in melee, plus the option to advance and charge them for 1 CP when you need it. At least 2 of those units will be led by Chaos Lords with Thunderhammer Plasma Pistol and Mark of Slanesh. Not really too surprised to see these being used in place of Chosen as an alternative. Now these are 80 and Chosen are 130. They look really quite scary indeed with all their rerolls against things on objectives. There's 1 Cultist mob with the sticky objectives and the Mark of Nurgle, 2 units of 3 Chaos Spikes, which are fantastically efficient skirmish units that can still threaten a surprising amount of damage. They've got 2 Melter Guns and a Power Fist, 2 units of Slaneshi Warp Talons with all the sustained hits. As mentioned, the Firepower units, the Hellbrute has Multi-Melter and Fist, and not too surprised to see a Chaos Vindicator here with the Mark of Nurgle, which do seem very scary on paper. Finally, there's just 1 unit of allied Nurglings, which are basically always handy for screening or maybe secondary options. Cool to see Chaos Bag and winning Grand Tournament straight out of the gate. I guess all of this might be a little bit short-lived though, as their Codex is coming really quite soon. Next up, and as lots of people were expecting, it seems that the Necrons are still here and doing fine. The biggest event of last weekend in the Richmond Open was won by Necrons run by Joshua Campbell. This one going down a Canoptek court list and not really deviating too much from the units that were taken before, but due to the vast majority of these units going up in one form or another, there's just a bit less stuff here. As with plenty of the Canoptek court lists, there's 3 units of 6 Wraiths with the Particle Casters and the Claws. They're all led by Technomancers, even if the Technomancers cost a lot more now, one of them taking Dimensional Sanctum for the Infiltrate. Otherwise, there's a Plasmancer and a big unit of Immortals, so big rerolls and lots of stacked saves against anything that's sitting on an objective there in particular. And Illuminor Seraz, who I'm guessing will be along with them, allowing his nice AP buffs and debuffs, and just generally being a very threatening lone operative next to Necron infantry in his own right. Otherwise, the only unit used that went down here was the Death Marks, 1 unit of 5 of them, which I think are very efficient little objective grabbers now, and not even bad on damage and defense. 2 individual Locust Destroyers, always quite nice for screening a little bit of firepower or maybe doing secondary work. Then loitering the backfield, 2 Canoptek Doomstalkers that get the big rerolls in this detachment and just really nice anti-elite firepower. And just 1 Transcendent Catan this time, only going up 10 points and still being just crazily durable and hard to take out for enemies, but not having quite the same sort of threat as the Nightbringer or Void Dragon. Overall, maybe not a huge amount of adaptation to any sort of new units here, and just going with the same stuff but less of it. Despite a big event win, it looks like Necrons really aren't going to be anywhere near as far ahead of the rest of the field as they were before. Second at that same big event, we've got the Chaos Demons, this list by David Edelman going 5 wins and 1 draw. I do feel like Demons might not be in the worst place in the world going into the next meta after the balance update. They did have really quite a high tournament win rate before, even if they weren't winning loads of events, and they got no changes while really quite a lot of the higher up armies got nerfs of one sort or another. As well as this one, it looked like they won another grand tournament this weekend too. This one's a very character heavy one. Be'lakor to shield the army from long range shooting early on, Scarbrand for his massive melee. A great unclean one, as basically one of the more auto-include demon units with endless gift for just crazy durability. Hard to go wrong with him just waddling up to one of the midfield objectives. A Keeper of Secrets with the Shining Aegis and the Witstealer Sword. And then a Ren Master on Blood Throne to help out 3 units of 3 Blood Crushers and cause them to hit the enemy very, very hard. I wonder if some of those might be charging out of reserve, maybe using Be'lakor's Shadow to get there. Otherwise, for objective support and things, there's the Mask of Slanesh as a fairly fast lone operative, 3 units of 3 Nurglings, and 1 sturdy unit of Plague Bearers for a bit of objective control. Looks like the only draw was against Tau here. Overall, kind of nice to see the Chaos Demons doing well. They do still seem to be rather focused on the big monsters and things though. Otherwise, taking a look at some winners of smaller events, this Grey Knights list run by Chase Chappell took first at the PCG Lightly Salted 40K Spring GT, going undefeated in a 29-player tournament. The Grey Knights balance changes were increases for Dread Knights and Librarians and decreases for the Power Armoured Marines. Not sure if that factored into the decision to run Crow with 10 Purifiers. They were kind of used but maybe not auto-include before. but certainly dropping 10 points doesn't hurt them at all. They can drop in, maybe use the 3-inch deep strike thing to deliver them, and then just absolutely blast away massive hordes of enemy infantry, a brutal amount of anti-infantry purifying flame type shots, plus 5 incinerators and a whole ton of stormbolter fire. If they can then go and Mist of Deimos away after that, then all well and good. Otherwise, there's Caldor Drago and 2 Brotherhood Librarians, one of which takes the Sigil of Exigence, though it looks like there's only 2 Terminator squads, 1 Brotherhood Terminator ones with an incinerator, and 1 unit of 5 Paladins with 2 Psy Cannons. I certainly guess that Drago would go with one of those, maybe the Brotherhood Terminators perhaps, given the lethal hits on the charge, he can get them into combat pretty reliably. And otherwise I'd guess that maybe the other Librarian goes with the other unit, and perhaps the Sigil of Exigence one could run solo. At least he could port to safety if the enemy tries to shoot him. Seems that it's still not enough to discourage people from taking Brotherhood Librarians though. The mortal wounds to help the Grey Knights out against heavies still seem to be worth the 120 points. Otherwise we've got 3 Dread Knights, both with incinerators and Psy Cannons. One's the Grand Master variant and the other 2 are regular ones, and they all take the Nemesis Demon Great Hammers. Really quite dedicated anti-heavy stuff there. And then finally there's a unit of fast-moving interceptors and a unit of 5 strike squads to help them mark some objectives. Overall, it does seem like a really nicely balanced Grey Knights list. I feel like with the last points changes, Games Workshop does seem to have struck a good balance between Power Armor Terminators and Dread Knights, where all 3 elements are really quite usable. Having a list that can incorporate all 3 elements like this, plus also win grand tournaments with a great player, just feels like it's a bit of a win from Grey Knight's balance, at least for most of the important units. Next up, and we've got some Space Wolves running their Stormlance task force, this one winning a 25-player grand tournament by Linton Rowan, using the Space Wolves to take first at Carnage at the Keep May Mayhem. This one's certainly Stormlance Space Wolves are a different sort of direction. The core of the list is basically as you'd expect for quite a lot of the cookie cutter ones of these. 3 big chunky scary units of Thunder Wolves led by Battle Leaders and Wolf Lords each. In Stormlance it means they can all advance and charge. They're enormously threatening on the charge given the buffs that the Wolves give the characters and vice versa. Plus have access to some pretty amazing mounted stratagems like that one for -1 to hit and wound at range. Put all that on efficient units with a lot of wounds and good invulnerable saves, and you've got a fair recipe for success. The characters here all take Power Fists and Storm Shields, and for the Wolf Lords, one of them takes the Portents of Wisdom enhancement and one with Hunter's Instincts. Those ones are the reroll advanced ones and the setup in the first battle round as per strategic reserves. Then to support them, they've got Logan Grimnar on foot, who just looks like he's being run solo here. He gives you the enormous turn of rerolls to charge and rerolls to hit in close combat, which gives you yet more melee damage, and he isn't too bad in his own right. A sturdy Terminator character that can hit pretty hard in melee and could drop to do secondaries and things as well. And then to help him out with the objective support game, there's a lone operative combi weapon lieutenant and 2 units of 5 infiltrators, I guess 1 dispatched to hold down the home field objective. The other one could do midfield things perhaps. Then rather than supporting with maybe a bit more of a balanced Space Marine thing though, I did think it was kind of hilarious that this one backed up the entire thing with just 3 Vindicators. I guess being tempted by the fact that they dropped down a fair bit in the last points update, they're 175 points now. So some really quite efficient incoming Demolisher fire there. I guess if you line up 1 or more of these and drop both a moment on the target, really good chance of just blasting through whatever heavy enemy target rears its head. I do like the commitment to the simplicity of this list though. Thunderwolves up the front, big siege cannons at the back. Every unit really quite terrifying in its own way. And the Vindicators here could access, advance and shoot if they needed to for 1 CP with Blitzing Fusillade. Kinda cool to see such a different random take on the Space Wolf Stormlands. Next up for their bitter rivals in the Thousand Suns, this one was run by Sam Nash, using it to take first at Winchester GT. This one a smaller event of 23 players. In the balanced update, Thousand Suns were doing pretty well beforehand, got a couple of small nerfs to their enhancements, but then got some buffs to a bunch of their support things, including things like Cultists and Scarab Occult Terminators maybe being some of the most interesting. This list for the most part maybe seems to be sticking at least somewhat close to what came before though. Lots of Rubik Marines backed up by an overabundance of Sorcerers plus Infernal Masters, with Magnus and Araman leading the way. I guess perhaps the biggest variations from the norm are 3 Infernal Masters, one with Arcane Vortex, even though it increased in price. The Rubik Marines are all fielded in multiple small unit type units, 5 units of 5 of them with Soul Reaper Cannon each and Warp Flamers. And there's perhaps more cultists than you might have seen in some of the lists in the past, 3 units of 10 of them with their special weapons. They drop down to 55 points and they get Scout and their invulnerable save in Thousand Suns. Otherwise, just lots of terrifying tricks on offer here. The Rubik Marines should handle enemy infantry units really quite nicely. Magnus himself is the big linchpin of the army with some massive rerolls and enormous damage against whatever he can reach, really great for focusing stratagems and cabalistic rituals on. Araman gets his free ritual and +1 to wound for his unit. The Infernal Masters spit out a whole bunch of magical firepower which could be fired out at the top of the Rhino if it made sense. The Arcane Vortex is the nastiest one with a +1 to strength and damage. The regular sorcerers have their disruptive ability to prevent shooting at greater than 18 inches, keeping their units quite safe, and the exalted one can potentially hand out a 4+ invulnerable save to a unit, or has binding tendrils to really mess with enemy movement and could slow down something really important by halving its movement things. Overall, just loads of tricks, options, and a whole bunch of psychic damage coming in from all the characters, and a massive amount of Cabal points with which to use those scary rituals like moving saves, double moves, or Doombolt. I still feel like Thousand Sons are probably going to be a faction to watch at the top levels. They seem to be in a pretty good place, being strong before, and having quite a few things buffed in the index. Wouldn't be too surprised if we see at least a few more people experimenting with things like Scarab Occult. Next up, for the Sisters of Battle, again I'm not too surprised to see them doing kind of well. They had a fair few high placings over the weekend, including an event win, this list being from the biggest tournament of the weekend, placing 5th at the Richmond Open, with an army run by Jeffrey Kolodner. This one's got a whole load of Sisters staple units, but maybe a few swings towards things that went down in cost a little. Morven Val plus Paragon Warsuit seems to be one of the most common includes in Sisters armies right now, just enormously efficient damage with the big rerolls and things. There's a second unit of Paragons without Val, and they take a mix of maces and swords. For the foot troops, there's 3 big units of 10 Battle Sisters. They have Multi-Melter, Simulacrum, Melter Gun, Condemner, and Power Weapon. One of them swaps the Melter Gun for a Ministora and Flamer instead. I'd guess that at least some of those might be being split in half, with the Immolators to make some multiple small unit style sisters. There's 2 Immolators here with multi-melters to transport to the front and hand out some nasty rerolls to the multi-melters and the units. There also does seem to be a unit of 5 Retributors here, so again not sure if one of those is going for an Immolator transport. Don't know if you could potentially even do some sort of swapping out around the units early in the game if it made sense. Have some split Battle Sisters jump out and Retributors jump in provided they're safe to do so. That's definitely a serious amount of melter fire that you can't really ignore with an Immolator with multi-melters with Retributors inside though. Otherwise, for long-range fire support, there's 2 Castigators with the battle cannons for the ignore cover for some longer-range anti-tank or heavy infantry. Some cheapish novitiates who I think might be being joined by the Palatine with the Blade of St. Eleanor. And for other support characters, we've got Junith Arita for her command point farming and heavy flamer things, and an Imagifier with Saintly Example. That's the one that allows you to farm a few more miracle dice when they die, and get to reroll miracle dice for Sororitas being destroyed within the 12-inch range of them. Finally, for some objective support, there's the Demonofuge, having dropped down to 70 points, Ephrael Stern and Kaiganil. Now seem like really quite a good deal, really quite tanky as lone operatives, and fights first can make them problematic for enemies to deal with in combat. Some Seraphim with hand flamers that can move, shoot, move to allow you to get to really quite interesting positions on the board, whether they're on the board or starting in deep strike. And 3 individual Mortifiers who drop down to 55 points. They've got Heavy Bolters and Twin Boss Blades. Feel like they're a unit hard to go too far wrong with really, just all around pretty good both in damage and defense. Again, like the Thousand Sons, the Sisters seem to be in a really good place to do well. They were also one of the strongest armies by win rate and winning lots of big events as well. Did take a few small nerfs to their more peripheral sort of objective support type units and Arco-Flagellants, but genuinely some good units got buffs like the Demonofuge and the Mortifiers as well, both of which seem to have been good enough to include in this top list. Finally, last but not least, the Sons of Sanguinius still seem to be represented, and this Blood Angels list by Christopher Irvine took second at the Clan Wars Scottish Open, going 4-1 in this 40-odd player grand tournament. The Blood Angels have been doing fairly well in the previous balanced data slate, not the highest win rate in the world, but had been winning some big events. If anything, I thought Games Workshop was maybe perhaps surprisingly punitive to them, things like Death Company, Lamatis, and Sanguinary Priests all going up by 10 points, fairly squarely hitting most of the things that were commonly taken in competitive armies. Still doesn't seem to be enough to take them out of competitive play though, as I do quite like this army list as just being really quite a nice varied one with lots of different options on the table. Still seems that the tried and tested Lamatis with the big unit of Death Company with jump packs is good enough to hit the table. They went up 30 points overall for that unit, but are still absolutely brutal in damage with all those reroll hits on Inferno Pistols and Power Fists, plus Lamatis is -1 damage for the unit. There's still a Chaplain in a Rhino with a whole bunch of regular Death Company Marines with the same loadout. Otherwise, looks like there's an Impulsor with a Captain with Power Fist leading some regular Assault Intercessors. Really scary in Sons of Sanguinius when you get +2 to your Strength on the charge. That's a whole bunch of Strength 6 and Strength 10 attacks. Potentially re-rolling the wound rolls as well. For some more quality jump packs, it still seems that the Vanguard veterans have been getting the nod over the Sanguinary Guard despite their decrease. There's a big unit of 10 Van Vets with Storm Shields, again hitting with high strength here, potentially having lethal hits on the charge, and the Sanguinary Priest gives them better AP and a feel no pain. There's the Sanguinor for his heroic intervention trick to just warp onto the board and cut up some enemies, and beyond that there's a little bit of objective and firepower support, 2 units of skirmishing jump intercessors which can still hit very hard on the charge in this detachment, 1 unit of scouts which are skewed towards a bit more of a combat loadout, taking some combat knives, a gladiator lancer so enemy armor can't relax, a Bile Predator with the Flamestorm cannon and some heavy flamers, a massive Overwatch threat in the midfield to worry one objective, and then as mentioned an Impulsor and a Rhino. The Impulsor takes the shield dome. Overall nice to see that Blood Angels aren't out of the running here. I was genuinely wondering if the points increases on basically all their good units might be a bit too much for them to bear. I might not be too surprised if some lists going forward use a few more jump intercessors, given that they went down to 80 points and are still kind of awesome in this detachment. In any case though, pretty fun to check in on a few competitive lists for the new meta in Warhammer 40k. Let me know your thoughts on the armies down in the comments below, or if you have any insights as to how they were played or any mistakes I've made here. Should be fun to take a look maybe in a couple of weeks time to have a look at some tournament win rates and things, and which armies are having the best time of it currently. If you've enjoyed the video then feel free to subscribe to Auspex Tactics. I'll certainly keep the regular 40k videos coming. I do tend to post new ones just about every day. Finally, if you have been enjoying all the videos on the channel, I would just like to mention that Auspex Tactics does have a Patreon page as well, and you can find that linked in the video description if you'd like to help support and keep these coming. Channel patrons do get a fair few advantages, seeing certain videos early, regular votes to see what sort of things come next on the channel, and automatic entry into the regular prize giveaways with a chance to win some big model kits each month. If any of that sounds good to you or you'd just like to help support, the link is down in the video description. In any case, a massive thank you for listening, and I'll hope to see you guys next time.